Today I'm joined by one of the best young stars in the horror genre and one of the stars of Terrifier, Catherine Corcoran. And Catherine, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to sit down and talk to you today.
Oh, thank you, Taylor. I'm so excited to chat with you.
So, it's certainly no secret that both Terrifier movies have become the center of fascination, especially within the entire horror landscape. So, I just wanted to ask you, what was it like to be involved in a project that has garnered so much attention like Terrifier?
Yeah, well, what's funny is I mean, Damien always says that he knew 110%, but I don't think anybody else did. So I think it was just kind of not anybody else. I know people did, but I certainly didn't. So I think it was kind of a surprise to see it just take off the way that it did. I always joke, like, everyone always asks, did you always want to make a name for yourself in this genre? And I always say, I always wanted to work. I think that's like half
Yeah.
the battle as an actor, is like being employed. So when this came along, while I loved the concept, part of it was also just like, great, a job. So I think seeing it really blow up in the way that it did has been really, really humbling, and I think really speaks to the power of audiences that we sometimes forget amidst, um, award seasons and film festivals and studio systems. I think it's really easy to think that you can't break through and really make a name for yourself, and that the chips are kind of stacked against you. And I think what this film franchise proves is the power of audiences, and because if people hadn't been so excited about the first film, that opening weekend with the second film wouldn't have done what it did and then continued to do what it did. So I think I'm just really humbled that anybody cares at all. And I'm so honored to be a part of something that's so fan driven, because that's like the real reward, right? Is that it connects with a group of people. That's why you tell stories.
I think there was such a uniqueness about it that just you couldn't help but like dive in and just like enjoy everything about it and want to keep like seeing more of the content unfold. It was a great experience as a horror fan myself to see something so unique like that.
Oh, thanks. I guess being kind of a movie buff myself, I didn't realize how unique it was until after we did it. Because Damien harkens back to so many different um horror tropes, but kind of puts this unique spin on it, which is like super cool. The person that you think is going to be the final protagonist isn't. I loved I know we always talk about the hacksaw scene, but one of my favorite kills in it is the one that David does, or who plays Art the Clown, with the shotgun, because that's just like so unexpected that the serial killer would have the shotgun the entire time. But of course, like, why wouldn't he? And it's like he's had this the whole time. Like, I just love this, like, things that are just like unexpected, and you're just like laughing through. And I think that is because Damien is a horror film enthusiast himself. He grew up loving to go to the conventions and be a part of that community. So like, when you take a fan of the genre and let them play with the genre, they really can, move things and change things in a way that you wouldn't have anticipated because they have a different perspective.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because when I first watched it, I thought your character was going to go like far, like all the way. I thought it was going to be final girl.
Really?
Yeah, it just had this like feeling, and your character in the movie actually, since you spoke about the saw scene, it's got to be one of the most brutal scenes I've ever seen in modern day like horror. And as a fan of horror, it was so great to see. What was it like to participate in such a jaw dropping scene like that?
Well, when I read the script, I came from, so this is, quite a few years ago now. It's been this like slow build. So when I read the script, I had kind of come off this run with Trauma Entertainment, which Lloyd Kaufman really pushes the envelope there and takes pride in pushing the envelope. So I was used to kind of having these conversations about like what can and can't we show, and what's going to be powerful and what's going to just not work at all, and what, all of these types of things. And I really enjoyed that kind of work. I think it's a little bit of a rebelliousness in me. When I was in high school, I took art classes, and I used to like to work as big as possible because that would they'd put me in the hallway. There was no room. And I would like to incorporate really like provocative imagery in my pieces because I just loved the concept of people having to walk by the like and like deal with whatever I
And
was like
have to see it, yeah.
yeah, and so like I think that I've always had this like little like rebellious like damn the man kind of energy about me and so I whenever something pushes a boundary, there's I think a little like devious part of me that's like okay, let's really stir the pot here. And when I read it, I was like, this is either gonna really land and really be amazing, or it's gonna be absolutely god awful. There's like no middle ground here, you know? And Damien and I talked quite a bit about why we were doing it and what we were trying to like accomplish with it. And he was just like, I just want to show something that nobody's ever done before. And you know, I am all in on like moving things forward in that way. Um so yeah, that's kind of how we did it. And I again I say this a lot, but Damien, when we shot it that night, he said, like, are you ready to make horror movie history? And I looked at him and was like, you are out of your mind. Like, this is like, it's not gonna be a big deal, you know? And just hear that that's what people really latched onto. And when I hear people talk about the film, they were like, "Oh, you got to see this! You got to see this scene, this one scene." And like I think that's what they talked about on Howard Stern and everything like that. I don't think I expected that to be the thing. I knew it was going to be a lot, but I think I just thought the film itself was gonna, you know, have so much. And so to hear that this is what really resonated with people is uh I don't know. I think it's I guess when you're doing stuff you don't realize, but it's quite an honor to know that I stay with you, and I hope everybody, you know, has recovered really, really well after that.
It was definitely horror movie history. Everybody I talk about, when we speak about the movie, that's the first thing that people remember, that iconic scene, and it just it's a long-lasting impression, especially on horror fans.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess that's all you can ask for, right? I'm just honored that they care at all. I mean, horror fans are so dedicated and so hard to impress, you know, because like you can't get one over on them. They know exactly what's going on. So I just feel so honored to have that, you know, that approval of the community.
And you discussed the scene's significance in a recent op-ed story for the Daily Beast, which you definitely felt strongly about. I think a lot of us felt strongly about. Why was it personally important for you to defend that specific scene?
You know, my whole career has kind of revolved around this like sexualization of myself and not you know, not in every project that I've been on, but certainly within genre. And um I think so often we just kind of are at the whim of other people's perception of us in this business, and it's really nerve-wracking and scary to kind of say something and to speak for yourself because you're so nervous that you'll alienate people or burn that bridge. And I think I wanted to address things in a way that would not only allow myself to have a voice, but for all the other women who have gone through things like this and other points in their career. You know, I don't I think it's amazing that we can actually talk about nudity in and have these things where it's not necessarily integral to a story, but that's kind of new, and not new just to genre, that's new to all forms of cinema if you look at the history of it. I mean, I don't know a female actor who hasn't gone through this kind of early in their career feeling like they have to perform nude. And it's a weird situation because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right?
Yeah.
You if if you say, "Oh yes, I'm," or if you say like, "Oh, I'm not comfortable performing this nude," the consensus is, "Oh, well, you know, she's not really an artist. She doesn't really take her work that seriously." But then if you do it, it's like, Oh, well, she's not very bright. She doesn't really take herself seriously. And I just wanted to kind of address the like overarching themes that come into play when you're doing this, and talk about why we as storytellers and kind of vessels for the human condition show things, authentic have to show things authentically. Um, and so that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it. And I think there is, in a way, sometimes a frustration when you watch other people speak on your behalf. So I think I wanted to just kind of really for the first time talk about how I felt about these projects that I've been a part of, and the things that I've done that I'm quite proud of, and what that means, I think, for genre and for storytelling in general.
I think it was a brilliant piece. I think it was really important for women. Um, and do you believe the article will have a positive effect on women in the entertainment industry? And do you believe it will influence your own personal projects in the future?
Oh, wow. I mean, I hope it has a positive effect on women in the entertainment industry. I originally wanted to, I talk about this a lot. I've always been really inspired by Barbara Crampton and her career. And she has this article called Don't Call Me a Scream Queen that she wrote
Yeah,
through
I've heard of it.
similar circumstance, and it was about her feelings about that term. And what I loved about that article as well is that she reached out to other people who worked in the genre to get their perspective on it, and some people felt similarly and some didn't. And I think that's what's amazing about being a dynamic performer, right? And working this business, that we all have different perspectives and things that we're comfortable with and things that we're not. And that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that someone is greater or less than in any way. So, if somebody feels that they're very proud of their work and their nude work, then that doesn't mean that someone who doesn't or has chosen not to is any less of a performer. And you know, I hope that women read it and feel that it's okay to speak for yourself and to say how you feel about things. I think that's, again, a really scary thing to do as a woman in this business, because you know it's so much harder to make a name for yourself, and you have to constantly kind of placate to what you think people want you to be. And I think that's in general, any sort of public persona, but I particularly for women. And for me, it was really freeing to actually just say how I felt and lead with what my background is and what I know about genre. So I hope that in an ideal world, that's what it will do for other women. I hope it doesn't in any way make anyone feel less than. That would be the last thing I'd ever want to do. In terms of my own career, I don't know. I never really know how things will pan out. I do think sometimes, or especially earlier in my career, I was nervous to lead with my knowledge of things. I have this small voice, and very often I get typecast into the kind of like young, like silly girl. So I think sometimes I'm worried about breaking that persona. So if people read it, perhaps they'll have a different perspective on me. If they don't, there's really nothing I can do about that. So yeah, it would be interesting to see if it does anything for my career going forward. It certainly has brought me a really wonderful conversation with you. So there's that.
Well, I think it was a great piece. I think Dawn was the perfect character for, portraying it in like a sexual freedom for women, and, marching to the beat of your own drum. What was your favorite part about playing Dawn?
Um, I that is kind of my favorite part about her. I think she is just so confident in herself in ways that sometimes I think I and other women struggle with. So I love, and that's my favorite thing about genre. I mean, and I do touch on it in the article, in its ability to tackle subjects in sometimes before the mainstream cinema field is ready to. I love that she's just kind of like comfortable in her skin. She's strong and dynamic. The first time I got to see that as a young girl on screen was in genre films, in films like The Craft, the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer film, and then the series. I think obviously the Alien franchise, like that was the first time I got to see interesting, different, strong, powerful types of women. And still that doesn't always happen on screen. I think I don't want to misquote this statistic, but I think it's like 51% of moviegoers are women, but only 30% of protagonists are women. And so that's, and again, I may have gotten that totally wrong, but
No, that sounds about right.
the numbers, and like that's so frustrating, right? To not be able to identify and feel empowered in yourself, and genre does that. And so what I love about Dawn is that even though it's kind of through this like comical lens, she has this strength about her and this confidence that is just unshakable, where Tara is immediately skeptical and doubts herself and has to find her confidence through the film. Dawn already has it. And I love that she leads with that. And I think that's why that scene is particularly powerful, because she's ultimately punished for her audacity, confidence, and bravery as a woman, and she's punished for talking kind of casually about interactions with men and not really being that invested in it. And I think and she's punished for the thing that biologically, like by the means of the thing that biologically makes her female. And I just think that that's such a powerful thing, and such an extensive commentary on what it is to be a woman, let alone what it is to be a woman in other parts of the world where, genital mutilation is very common. And so I love being able to play women like that, and being able to take on that sort of agency from them in my own life. And I talked a little bit about Newcomb High as well in that piece. And what I love about those characters is that, and this was really important to Lloyd and Pat and the entire team, was that regardless of all the silly and crazy things, and like, no, it's a trauma film, so nobody is safe, and we are going to make fun of everybody, but we are not going to make fun of this relationship, because this is just an authentic relationship and we're going to depict it that way. And I love that. And I love, again, genre's ability to just dive right in and go, why shouldn't we be talking about this? Why shouldn't we address things the way that they are? And I love that they have this like visceral feeling for audiences to keep thinking about and keep talking about now, even 7 years later.
Those are some great points, because I think Dawn is such a great character to go against Art the Clown. I think she pushes him. She's proud about her confidence. What was it like working with David? And did you both know that you were a part of something special?
Well, David is such a sweetheart. He's really wonderful to work with. That was his, and I may be wrong about this, but I'm pretty positive that was his first feature ever. He was a theater actor and had done off-Broadway tours, played understudied for The Grinch. And so he had this kind of like physical comedy about him that obviously really lends itself to a silent character like Art. And I remember in that there was this like safety and respect there. So I don't think I ever felt like there was something I couldn't do. And we were constantly like checking in with each other to make sure that things were cool and safe. And I think that's like the biggest thing that you can ask for in a scene partner, where you're doing things where you're physically moving them around, not just him to me, but me to him. And ever since, he's just been this like fun energy to have around when we all can reconnect. So I think that's the best part about working with someone like David, is this like effortless silliness that really lends itself to a clown character, but also to someone that you're working with and navigating, sometimes challenging situations.
And I know Damien's working on a third part. Are you looking forward to Terrifier 3? And if so, do you think Dawn will make a special flashback appearance?
I can confirm or deny nothing about Terrifier 3 and what Damien has planned there. I can say that I'm certainly looking forward to it. You know, I think all you can ask for with a director is that they try to push themselves to do better every single time, and I think it seems like with the second one he really did. He really tried to invest in the he took what people were saying and criticized about the first and tried to improve upon that on the second with an even bigger budget. I think the characters, it seems like, are a little bit more fleshed out in the second one. They have these kind of ebbs and flows, which is really cool to see with female characters. And I think given an even bigger budget with a bigger studio and you know, again, a really great team behind him, that will improve even more. So yeah, I am excited. I think anytime you get to work with someone and see their career continue, you just want them to do better and better, and I'm excited to see him do that.
And of course, Terrifier, as you mentioned, wasn't your first taste of horror, as you made a big splash in the Return to Nukem High franchise. What initially drew you to the horror genre?
I joke about this a lot. You know, work is work, and I was 19 when I booked Return to Nukem High, and you know, when you're an actor, you do this kind of like trajectory that you know, you start with your co-stars and your guest stars on different television shows, and you do like a couple of small parts here, and you kind of build. And Trauma was the first time somebody had offered me a starring role in a feature film. It wasn't my first feature, but it was certainly the first time I really had the ability to craft a character all the way through. And not only that, but with a team that really valued how I felt about the character, and really listened to what I had to say and developed things around me. You know, Lloyd casts as an ensemble, which I think is quite cool. So he'll as you're reading, he tends to almost screen test you, or he like subs people in and out and tries to see who works well together, because it really is a family environment. And so like that, I think, drew me to the those films in general, to a point where like I joke that we all must have weird Stockholm syndrome or something, because whenever Lloyd does anything, we all come back and like help out in different ways. And a lot of those people still are my best friends, you know, to this day. I've been in their weddings. I, you know their kids. So I think that was the first thing, like as a young performer, a community was so huge, and genre has this community that's really, really incredible, you know. And so when Nukem High premiered at Cannes, after that you know, I started getting more involved in the community, and I just started getting more genre offers. And it was so cool to be able to work with people who not only knew what you had done in the past, but wanted to see you succeed in the future. And again, that's really rare, like that in this business, that there's just this like tight knit group that wants to see each other succeed. And recently when people were tweeting about the films, and them both, and the second one coming out and the first one having this like again resurgence that's happened a few times throughout its trajectory, people were saying, you know, it's so funny to watch the horror community geek out over each other's work. It's like watching, you know, Proud Parents. And I think that's so true. You know, everybody really gets excited when something does well, and wants to kind of rally together, because it's great for all of us, you know, this like rising tide lifts all ships type thing. And again, that doesn't always happen in the entertainment business, because it is so vast. So I think while I love all the other work that I do, and I'm always trying to consistently do more of that, that's what brings me back to great genre projects, is just this amazing community that exists around it.
Well, as an aspiring horror filmmaker myself, I definitely know that the horror community can make you feel really accepted, and just they're like one tight knit group.
Yeah.
Um, and I know you mentioned, you know, working, you know, everybody needs to work, absolutely. But do you consider yourself personally a horror fan? And if so, I have to ask what your favorite horror movie is.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm definitely a horror fan. I would say I tend to lean more towards like psychological thrillers than slashers. It's not to say that I don't have ones that I like. Damien and I connected a lot on this. One of my favorite horror films of all time is The Lost Boys. I love vampires. Obviously, I was a
Me
big
too.
girl growing up, so like that's a big one. The Craft is a big one for me. I really like the Friday the 13th franchise. I actually, a controversial opinion, while I thought the most recent Halloween film had some problematic elements, I loved the idea of putting Jamie Lee Curtis as this like badass fighting protagonist back in there as an older woman. I thought that was a really freaking cool choice. You know, you don't get to see middle-aged women kicking ass on screen, and I just thought that was amazing. And I loved seeing in a business that can be a little ageist, everyone really just rally around her. I thought that was amazing. More recently, I love The Witch, which is also a little bit controversial. Some people say that's not a horror film. I say if it's a witch, it's about a witch and the devil appears, it is a horror movie. I loved The Babadook a few years ago. I thought that was a great film. I love Reanimator. That's like I love that film. Yeah, I think that was a great one. So yeah, I mean, I could go. I have quite a few. I could go on and on. What are your favorite horror films?
Well, I was just gonna say you actually listed a lot of my favorites. I love Friday the 13th. I love The Witch. Hereditary was great.
Hereditary is great.
I love Halloween. That's my favorite horror franchise.
Yeah.
So they could be the worst movies ever. If they came out and made a new one tomorrow, I would still go and see it and love it. And
Yeah, and I think that's so great, right? About the horror community is like you have that, and not in general. I mean, it transcends into fantasy and sci-fi too, but there are just very few things where people are like, yes, they're making this and I'm going and I want to see it. And not only just see it, but see it in theaters. Like that's such a dying thing in cinema that does not happen. And statistically, year after year, horror films do amazing at the box office. They always do. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. And, you know, that's such a cool community to be a part of, because that's what I love, is seeing movies in theaters. And like I geek out on like the Super 8 cut that we're gonna sit here and watch, you know, and like years later. So for me, that's the coolest part about the genre.
Well, I feel that way about Terrifier. I'm like, if they make one tomorrow, I'm going to the theater to see it.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate that. We certainly do.
But I hope to see you in more horror movies, because I thought you were great in Terrifier. And I wanted to ask, did you always know that you wanted to become an actress?
Yeah, actually, such a funny question. It's true, but it's such a funny answer. I mean, but it's true. I I was definitely like a really precocious kid. I would like do like the shows in the driveway or whatever, and I started doing theater. You know, I did as a kid. The equity allowed you to cast in different cities when like productions came through. So when they needed like cute kids and like productions of like Annie and The Sound of Music or whatever in Philadelphia, like I was there, and that's what I did. And then I got a little older and I stopped being so cute, and I said to my mom, you know, I really want to do this. And so I started taking acting classes and got my first agent that way, and you know, started submitting and going on jobs, and it just kind of always went from there. And you know, now I'm really blessed that not only am I a working actor, which again we talk about is not an easy feat, but you know, I've gotten to really be trusted with the development of other aspects of projects, and that really means a lot to me too. So yeah, I'm very lucky that I get to every day work in the field that I dreamed that I'd be able to work in as a little girl.
And we've said it a million times already, but you've made a huge splash in horror. Which genre of acting would you like to pursue in the future?
Oh gosh. Um I am a huge fantasy nerd. If someone knocked on my door tomorrow and was like, "Would you do the next we're doing another spinoff of the Silmarillion for the Lord of the Rings. Would you play Lithuanian? I would cry. I would like that. I love Lord of the Rings. I'm such a loser. I could watch those films over and over again. I like if someone was like, would you do the House of Dragons spinoff? I'd be like, yes, like that. I would love. I'd love to kind of do some more actiony type things. I box and I'm pretty into fitness, so like and do a lot of my own stunts. So like maybe at some point I'll have an opportunity to work in some sort of like even a small thing in some sort of superhero realm would be really cool, or even just like badass. I love like if they did another Mad Max film, like that'd be sick. I've been waiting for that moment my entire life to dress in post-apocalyptic gear and run around the desert, and haven't been to Burning Man, so like there's like an unfulfilled urge, I guess, in me. And then yeah, I love fantasy and like period pieces. I would love to do like a Shakespeare thing, which I know sounds really silly, but that's like it's very opposite end of the spectrum. But yeah, that's kind of my world there.
I'm right there with you on the fantasy train. I love Lord of the Rings. I've read all the books.
Oh yeah, during the pandemic, I read I was reading children's books for charity, like for adults in a silly way, and we raised quite a bit of money doing it. I was in we was like I don't know, I think it was like $20,000 by the end of it. But on Sundays, I would read The Lord of the Rings and not ask for anything. I would read Fellowship because I'm just a loser. I don't know, people like to like keep me in activity.
Hey, they've got the Warhammer series coming up, so I mean, you never know.
Oh, right? I'm like, I honestly like that stuff. Like I did a talk at San Diego Comic-Con this year, and I was so stoked to be invited to the after party for the Rings of Power series. I was like, what? I'm like, I was really excited to see the trailer, like premiere there. Like, and no, like, I don't know. I think people look at me and they're like, what is wrong with you? Like, relax. But I mean, you do this because at the end of the day, we're all, I'm a huge fangirl, and everybody else is that does this, because you wouldn't get involved if you didn't geek out over things like this. I mean, and if you do, and if you don't, I mean, well, I'm sorry, because it's got to be a really frustrating business if you're not a super and super excited about these things.
If you could offer any advice to somebody with aspirations to become an actor, whether it's in horror movies or not, what would it be?
I would say trust your gut. That's a big one. I think I wasted a lot of time early in my career second guessing myself. And know that whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you look like, sound like, feel like, there's a place for you. The best advice I ever got was from one of the best people and actors I've ever known in my entire life. And he said to me, all you have to do to be successful in this business is keep telling stories and don't die. And what he meant by that is there will always be stories to tell. There will always be people who resonate with your stories. It doesn't matter what you look like or what you sound like. All you have to do is keep telling them and don't die. So just keep going. That's the end. Like it sometimes feels like you're banging against the wall, begging for somebody to see you. And I promise you that they do, and they will if it feels like they haven't already.
Well, I speak on behalf of the horror community, and we see you, and we appreciate everything you've done. And thank you so much for sitting down to talk with me today. It was an absolute honor and pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, absolutely, Taylor. It was so nice talking to you. I look forward to reading all your pieces about genre in the future.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.